All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to today's event. Super excited about this conversation. We are diving into one of the most crucial topics for SaaS businesses today, which is email marketing. And we all know how challenging it can be to get people to open emails and let alone engage with them. But today we have a special guest who has cracked the code. And I'm thrilled to introduce Arielle Gordis, an email marketing expert at Monday.com, who has achieved an impressive 61% open rate for their SaaS newsletter. Hi, Arielle, and thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So, Ariel played a key role in Monday.com's email marketing strategy, and today we'll explore tactics, experiment some strategies, and best practices that led to her success. But before we dive in, just a quick reminder for you guys, drop your questions in the chat. We'll have a Q&A session at the end. And Ariel, I would love if you could share a bit about your background and journey into content marketing. Can you tell us what led you to join Monday.com and focus on email marketing?
For sure. So I actually in my university was very much it was a content heavy degree. It was called Industrial and Labor Relations, and it was
Oh, wow.
understanding the world through the lens of work. So it was a combination of human resources, economics of wages and employment, international labor law, lots of different subjects that were all very much lots of content. They joked that ILR stood for I love reading. And basically, it's lots of reading, lots of writing, but I loved it. And by the way, there's a strange sound that
Oh, okay. Let me check if that's somehow on my side. Okay.
now I don't hear you, but I can continue. I don't hear the sound anymore. So basically, in that degree, it was a lot of writing. But it really also in the classes that were more related to strategy and business, I really found a connection there. So my first job out of university was as a marketing specialist. So I was kind of like Jane of all trades, doing lots of different marketing, assets and campaigns, etc. And my manager very quickly identified that writing was a very strong suit of mine. And she really wanted to leverage that skill for all of our different campaigns and messaging docs, etc. So in that kind of role, I transitioned into a much more content heavy marketing person. I loved it. It was really, really cool. I loved writing value driven content and really understanding who are our users and what's the message that's going to resonate and all that. And then after that, it was I transitioned to Monday. I started off on actually split between brand and email marketing. And brand is very different, really, really short copy that's super creative and, billboard campaigns and train ads and podcast audio ads and Hulu, lots of different creative things. And then email marketing was a lot more data driven and, here's the information. How do we build a strategy and how do we message this to the right audience at the right moment? Loved both. But I think that definitely the area that I was bringing an added unique value was when it came to email marketing. So after around a year kind of in both roles, I transitioned to full-time email marketing. And since then, I have been on this amazing team with awesome people, building out lots and lots of email marketing campaigns. We can get into the different kinds, but that includes this thought leadership newsletter that I've been managing for the last over 3 years. And yeah, so.
Wow, that is super exciting. Speaking about email marketing, what types of email marketing does Monday.com generally use? So, besides newsletters that you are creating, do you guys also work on some kind of nurturing sequences or, I don't know, maybe some kind of automated campaigns? Could you share with
Yeah,
us?
yeah. Monday sends a lot of emails, and there's a wide range. So even we have this thought leadership newsletter, but we also have a product newsletter that for each one of our products, whether it's Monday Dev, Monday Work Management, Monday CRM, now Monday Service, we have dedicated newsletters that are going to share product updates and relevant webinars and kind of what's going on from a more platformy perspective. We also have, of course, a new trial flow. So when someone starts a free trial of Monday, we'll send them kind of useful information to get started. What kinds of things should you check out? Here's how to maximize your trial experience. We have flows for new users. We have flows to try to win back customers. We have nurture flows. We have expansion flows, cross-sell when we're trying to help you grow and scale your business with Monday. We'll also send emails about, asking for feedback. We will do surveys, webinars, events. It's a ton of emails.
Wow, that is crazy. I mean, how many people are there in your email marketing department?
So the email marketing department is around, I think it's 9 people, but there's a lot of other departments at Monday that will send emails. They're just not the ones that I would be part of. Those kinds of emails are like, Monday's hosting a small event in this city. We'd love for you to join. And that team will, in their own dedicated, write the content, but my team is still in charge of sending it. So they are very, very busy with the hundreds of different requests that
Gosh, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. That's a lot of work. And so let's say you just joined Monday and you started working on a newsletter, right? So what was the first thing that you did and what kind of strategies did you try out?
So, okay, honestly, when this newsletter was first assigned to me, it was very intimidating. It was actually like the vision of our CEO that he wanted us to create a value driven newsletter, which is very different. He was like, I don't want us to be selling anything. I don't want us to be like, trying to market our product. I actually want to just give value and create this sense of FOMO where people are not going to unsubscribe because they don't want to miss out on this valuable information. It was a big ask. And he was like, I want it to be really long. He showed me some examples of like, I want it to be very, very text heavy. I don't really want us to be linking out to other places. I just want to be like, this is the place you can go for the information you need. So actually the first place that I started was really breaking down Monday as a company. What is our underlying goal? If you had to summarize it in a few words, at the end of the day, why do we exist? And I kind of decided, like, my understanding is that we exist to make your work life better. And I decided that through that same, premise, I would create this newsletter, and the newsletter's goal would be to make your work life better. And then it started with asking myself all these different kinds of questions of, well, okay, so what are the challenges? What are people missing out on? And so, for example, especially because our target audience, I mean, we're trying to address people that are early on in their careers, that are more experienced, that are very experienced. But ultimately, if our kind of the main Monday audience is typically like managers, directors. So I was trying to think about like, what are their kind of pain points? And honestly, in general, across the board, even for, lower, more junior employees or really more senior executives, one of the biggest things is time, that we just don't necessarily have the time to be doing all the research on what's going on and finding the most relevant information and getting the insights we need to make the right decisions for our business and for our teams and for our own growth. And so the first kind of goal was, I want to keep them in the know. I want these readers to feel like they finished reading this email more informed than they were before they opened it. And I want it to be really through that same goal of making their work life better. I want to be giving them value, and I want to give them advice that's relevant to how to make work better. And so basically that was kind of the guiding principle in terms of, the greatest challenge of that is obviously time. It's a lot of work to be finding out all the latest news, doing the research, crafting the content, and building out this really strong, informative, value-driven newsletter every single week. And I'd say that was probably the biggest challenge. But I think also, an interesting kind of learning from it was following his kind of goal of not making it feel marketing. This very nicely designed banner, like it was really pretty. But then we started looking at it, we were like, you know what? We don't want it to feel like a marketing ad. Like it should feel like a newspaper kind of. Like this is an email that enters your inbox that's just like informative. And so the goal there was actually to really, really simplify the design. We made it really simple. There's very few like colors, visuals, and it's really easy to skim, just like a newspaper.
Yeah, I definitely love simple. I've been checking out your newsletter that you've shared with me, and I think it looks amazing. But can you tell me, like, how this approach evolved over time? Are you taking the same approach right now to the newsletter that you've been taking, when you just started, or has it changed?
I think that the greatest thing, like, I think really the approach has stayed the same. What has changed is actually more so. By the way, I'm still hearing the sound. I don't know what it's coming from, but it's just like a strange underlying hum. I don't know. But anyway, I think that what has changed is
Ariel, can you hear us? Ariel?
did you lose me?
Here? Are you still here?
Okay, yeah, I'm here. I don't
Okay,
know.
yeah, just a little bit of a hiccup, but that's okay. Okay. Yeah, we were speaking about, how your approach has evolved over time.
Yeah. So basically, one of the things that we've tried to do with this newsletter is asking for feedback along the way from readers, asking them which sections resonate. What are the things they would change about the newsletter? Are there things that they like? Are there things they dislike? And that feedback has kind of guided specific adjustments that we've made. I'm happy to share that oftentimes the feedback is really, really positive. But even little tweaks of like the font here is too small, or I would love for the top. One of the biggest pieces of feedback I think that has really changed the newsletter over time actually was we got a lot of responses saying like this is super interesting, but it feels very like US centric. And they were like, we want to, I'm not from the US, or I'm actually curious what's going on across the globe. And so one of the priorities going forward after that feedback from several people was let's make this a more global newsletter. And so every week we're really intentional about trying to find insights, information, and making sure our topics are relevant to people in different parts of the world. And I think that's something that definitely has changed over time based on reader feedback.
How long would you say it takes you to get things prepared, for one single newsletter?
Yeah. So I will say that when I started, it was a lot of work and a lot of time. It was something that, I mean, definitely several days. But as I started to master the process, as I started to get comfortable, it became clear to me who the voice is of this newsletter. How do we speak? What kinds of topics do we address? Like the more I became confident in every decision of like this, I stand by this. This is who we are. The easier it became, and the faster I was able to get it done. The other thing is that obviously, I mean, it's really really exciting, as you said, the numbers. But they really gave us insights into like this is something that we should be investing in and we should be growing. And so part of my role was actually to really like take this newsletter in a lot of different directions. We opened a LinkedIn page, we created social videos, I created a book, we had a World of Work research report, like lots of different cool other projects. And part of the way that we made that happen was that within the last year, we brought in some freelancers that I've been working with to build out the content now. They're amazing. There's two of them and they're awesome. And really like that process has also changed it. One of them is in charge of one aspect, the other one's in charge of another, and I've been overseeing that, making sure that it still is aligned with our brand voice, who we are, that the topics are timely and relevant. But it's been really like I think the hardest part for me was actually this realizing I have to kind of let go of the control if I want to be able to engage in all these other projects. So now for my time, it's a lot less because I'm not doing it all on my own. But when I would say it was probably like a day and a half, 2 days of work, like
And
hard
how
focus.
often do you guys send it?
Yeah, so we
Is it
send it every Tuesday, so every week. And when I say a day and a half, 2 days, it wasn't that like those 2 full days were dedicated. It was like every day I was working on it. Like there was not a day of the work week that I wouldn't work on a newsletter, because the second we would send it, I was starting the next one.
would you say the time is important, really, like when you send it?
You mean like the frequency or the time of day?
Yeah, the time of the day, I would mean.
So it's interesting. I think yes and no. I don't think it's like a deal breaker. I mean, basically, because it's a global audience, when we schedule it, like we're sending it. Some people are getting it in their morning, some people are getting it in their evening. I think it's interesting. We got in a lot of feedback that people would, if they got it in their afternoon, they would wait until the next morning on their commute to read it. So I think it's the kind of thing that if we send it in the morning, they might actually read it that day. If you send it in the afternoon, maybe they'll read it on their way home, or maybe they'll read it the next day. So we typically send it on Tuesday, and we'll see that like the open rates really start going up from Tuesday evening all the way through Wednesday evening.
So yeah, I'm wondering if you could share some possibly like mistakes that you've made that you can say that, okay, I'm not doing it again, and maybe something that you can recommend to everyone, who's just starting out, don't do this, do this instead.
Yeah, it's a tough question. I think one would be related to, what I said about this marketing piece. I think that if your goal is to create a really value-driven newsletter, you really have to be careful about how much you're trying to sell at the same time. If your goal is, I just want people to trust my business, like to trust my brand and to keep coming back, then part of that is really not trying to be creating these really branded ads and adding in a lot of like, CTA buttons to be clicking on different things, but really like ultimately, breaking it down into this is the most important takeaway. I think the other thing is that when you're trying to speak about timely news, a challenge is the fact that news is not necessarily objective. And as much as we're trying to give just like, here is what is going on in the world of work, there are times where we've made like, we've gotten response from people like, this feels like too opinionated. Like it feels like you're taking a stance, and I don't agree with that stance. And it's really, really valid feedback. And it's something that we definitely work towards, of making sure that we're giving value and we're sharing what's going on without making it seem like we're taking a really clear position on something. But it is complicated, and it's something that we definitely, I'd say that when you're crafting this kind of thought leadership content, you have to know you're going to get pushback, and there's going to be people that don't agree with your approach. I mean, sometimes we would write a thought leadership section about how to navigate a certain challenge, and the feedback was like, well, that's not realistic, or I would never do it this way. And, okay, that's most of the feedback was not that. Most of the feedback was really receptive. People actually sharing like, this is so helpful, so relevant to my day to day. People saying they read it every week. It's a newsletter they look forward to navigating their current place at work. But yeah, there's always going to be those people that don't resonate, and kind of try to make
Exactly. I
sure
mean,
you
you
capture
can't be
that.
liked by everyone. So, and speaking of, do you somehow segment your audience and differentiate based on that, or it's pretty much one audience and one newsletter that caters to all of
Yeah.
them?
So at this stage, no. At this stage, it's one newsletter for everyone. I think that it's something that if you have the resources to segment, I'm a big believer in it, because I think the more relevant and timely and personal your content feels, the more it'll resonate. Which is why actually our approach has always been, we're not giving advice to marketing people, to dev people, to engineer, to project managers. Our content is really about being a leader, about being, it's a universal experience of whether you are the manager, or you're managed by the manager, or you're aspiring to be a manager, or you've long been a manager, or you manage managers. Whatever it is, the idea is the content will resonate because it's basically about being a human in the workplace. And I think that that's why we haven't had to segment as much, but it is something that, like, if I had unlimited resources, I would definitely do one that's specifically to sales, specifically to marketing, specifically to senior leaders, specifically to junior, new employee, new managers. I think that the more you can, great, but realistically sending that every week, it's a lot. So
That is true. What is the size of your database, if you can share that? Like, how many people get your newsletter every
yeah, so
week?
this is not necessarily Monday's database, but the number of people that get this newsletter is a little bit over 4 million people.
Oh, okay. Those are impressive numbers. Okay,
Yeah, which makes
congratulations.
it really wild when I'm like 61% open rate. That is Over 2
Okay.
million people are reading this newsletter every week.
Every week. Yeah, how
Yeah,
crazy is that? So, I mean, you're
pretty
like
unfathomable.
well-established media, the CNN of project management. Yeah, we got some that's impressive comments going on in the chat.
That's a pretty
Okay.
wild number.
So one of the things that I'm curious, and I mean, I think it's connected to open rate, is the subject lines, right? Because
Mm.
these are important, and I know, from my experience that I wouldn't open it, something that screams promotion or something that is not relevant. Like, how do you make sure that your subject lines trigger those opens?
It's a great question. So honestly, our subject lines are so the way we do it is every week the subject line is actually just the topic of the thought leadership. And the idea being that the thought leadership is always a really timely. Well, actually, let me walk you through the structure first of the newsletter so I can get to the subject line strategy. Basically, our newsletter has workplace trends, which is kind of what's going on in the world of work. There'll be 2 updates about news, economies, business challenges, etc., across the globe. And there'll be 2 sections about AI in the workplace. What's the latest with AI? How are companies adopting it? What are the challenges? Any of those kind of categories would be included in one of those sections. And then there's this thought leadership section, which is actually the longest section in the newsletter. And it's always a timely topic a challenge that leaders have to navigate. So whether it's navigating workplace conflict, whether it's, when is it time to give a promotion, or how do you give meaningful feedback, or, a whole host of challenges that leaders in their day-to-day have to experience. We kind of set the stage at first of like, why is this important for you to be thinking about right now? And then we'll go into advice, actually, guidance. What should you do about it? Then there's a water cooler chatter section, which is kind of like you're making coffee in the morning and it's did you know that? And it'll always be some of these like random things going on in the world that are actually really interesting to talk about at work. And then there'll be a question of the week, which is like a fun fact related to work. And then we work with this amazing New Yorker cartoonist who creates these work themed New Yorker cartoons that we put in our at the end of the email. That's just for laughs, and it's a really relatable kind of makes you giggle because it's like if you get it, you get it. So those are great. And so answering your question about subject line. So first of all, in general, subject lines, no matter what, should not be too long because they will get cut off. So our goal whenever it's creating the subject line for the newsletter, again, it's the same as the title for the thought leadership section. And it's always pretty directly what is the challenge or how do you navigate this or tips for, whatever it is, it's very clear. And it's concise. It's, and I think in general, I would advise whenever you're doing email marketing beyond even newsletters to make sure you're really addressing the value or the pain point. It's also never a yes or no question. Because if you open your inbox and you see a question that your answer in your head is no, you're not going to open the email. And so you just lost that audience. So we always make sure that if we are asking questions, it's like how or what, as opposed to is or do you, So yes, those would be some of the kind of ways that we frame it. And the preview text, which is that gray text right underneath the bolded text or to the right of the bolded text, depending on how you're opening it. That gray text is always going to be kind of a high level summary of the workplace and AI corner, like the workplace trends and the AI corner, so that you get a taste of what kind of like trends and insights are going to be above the thought leadership.
How do people subscribe to this newsletter? So do they go to the website? Well, I went to the website, I know. I just Googled monday.com newsletter, really, to subscribe. But generally, like, where's the call to action for that? Is it like every single page? Is it blog? Is it somewhere else?
So it's a good question. Actually, I will say that Monday has more than one newsletter. So it might be you might not necessarily get that one if you do it that way. In terms of like subscribing, we have it in our so the other main newsletter that we do, we have this thought leadership newsletter. And then we also have platform driven newsletter, which means every month for each of our products, Monday Dev, Monday Work Management, Monday CRM, and Monday Service, we are sending a monthly newsletter with kind of like a roundup of what are the latest features you should know about, and what are the, webinars you might want to join for education. Are there any other, assets or insights that you need to know? And we always have the ability to subscribe to the newsletter there, because it's the thought leadership newsletter. It's much more of like if you want to opt into this, you can. We also, on blogs, yes, like you can, if you're reading the thought leadership blogs, you can subscribe. In our podcast, we'll have a link, but it's not something that necessarily like we have a landing page as well, but it's not that you go to the Monday homepage and you'll see a place to subscribe to this thought leadership newsletter. It's kind of like, if you look for it, you'll find it.
So the list
And
is growing fast, right?
Yeah, the list does grow fast, but also like some of those numbers are also people that like will automatically start getting it, and they can obviously opt out of receiving it. But given the amazing like receptiveness that we've seen, some people are automatically subscribed to receiving it, and then they can always unsubscribe. But we actually have very, very low unsubscribe rates.
So if you were joining, let's say, a new company, which is smaller and doesn't exactly have 4 million subscribers to begin with, where would you start and how would you structure your email newsletter? Because a lot of people who are listening to us right now, they don't have those 4 millions in their database.
Yeah.
So how would you approach, the smaller audience?
Yeah, so I think that it kind of actually ironically does still follow the same logic that I gave of how we got started with this newsletter. I think first and foremost, understanding who's your target audience and thinking about what are their pain points. Once you, as I said, kind of establish your company's bottom line, what's the value, what's the kind of high level category of why people would be interested in us, letting that frame your kind of content strategy there. But then when it comes to making the decisions about what needs to be included in this newsletter and how should I frame it and what should the structure be, really thinking about what are the challenges, what are the pain points that this target audience is facing, and then what unique value can I bring them to navigate this. It's always helpful when you're specifically trying to do thought leadership to bring in trusted leaders who know what they're talking about. I definitely found, especially earlier on when I was just building out the newsletter, that it was really helpful to speak to experts in their fields. I actually reached out to some like previous professors asking for like their insights on topics that I knew were related to what I wanted to address. Like there was one on like a topic of internal mobility, and I knew my professor was like an expert in that topic, and it was really helpful to get his insights and his interpretation of articles and this and that. And so it was a really, really strong newsletter based on expert advice and guidance and data-driven insights. I also think that if you can think about, what kind of news, obviously we're really lucky. This workplace trends is something that's really, people want to know what's going on in the world of work, especially because it's changing so quickly and so much. So, basically making sure we had our finger on the pulse, we knew what was going on. And I also think that really thinking about like a creative touch that you can include. I mean, I think the cartoons are something that really make our newsletter stand out from other newsletters, is that you can always expect to like get a little chuckle at the end from this really creative, work related cartoon, which you can check out also on the Monday Insights LinkedIn page, also has some of those examples, but they're really cute and really, I think, give you that final, like as much as you're being educated, you can still look forward to a little laugh at the end. And I think that like, if I was starting a newsletter again, I would think, and I wasn't doing it that way, I would think about what's something that's like witty or creative, or like, this is very us, that's familiar. This is our brand as a whole. Like I always think about Monday Insights or the Monday.com weekly as kind of like your work mentor who like gives you advice and guides you through and keeps you updated on what you should do, but also you can laugh with them a little and have a lighthearted conversation. So it covers it as a full picture.
Yeah, I love that. So you mentioned interviewing some of the professors, in the past to kind of like find out some insights. And what about the actual people on the receiving end, right? Like the customers. Did you do some kind of interviews to get into their shoes to understand like what they're craving for, like what do they want to hear, what they would be interested in?
Yeah, we did. We did run some interviews. I mean, obviously, it's funny. It is such a huge amount of people that even running an interview with several, it's really hard to say like, well, this is reflective of all 4 million. That's why I think with that number of people, for us, the surveys were actually a better way to, use of time and also a better way to kind of gauge the real quick questions. What do we want to know? Here's how we get those answers. But I definitely think that, especially as you're starting out, to have interviews, to have conversations. I mean, I remember I spoke with someone who talked about, a question that I have is, can managers be friends with their team members? Because I'm a manager and I don't know the boundary. And so that guided another topic was, can managers be friends with their team members? And I spoke to someone else that was saying, like, for me, my biggest challenge is just as a parent, balancing it all. And so the conversation was actually, as a leader, how can you support the parents on your team? So often the topics would stem from conversations with, whether it was an interview or it was actually just conversations in the workplace or with friends or family or, just in general, what people are struggling with, what are the challenges they're facing, and let's help.
So I was looking at the newsletter and I noticed this button, which is sign up button, right? Sign up for Monday.com. Maybe you can elaborate just a little bit on how those newsletters actually help to get you signups.
Yeah.
Do they
So
help?
the truth is that actually we only very recently added in the ability to sign up for a free trial. And part of that was that we were getting some feedback that people were interested a little bit more in, like, Monday as a product. Even though this newsletter was very thought leadership, some of the feedback was, how can I use this feature for this? Or where are the feature updates? Or how can I, so we were trying to kind of create this sort of platform tie of tying in the thought leadership section to a call to action, because the truth is, and not even trying to really sell Monday here, but really it is relevant in so many of the thought leadership topics that we cover. Having a work software that you can leverage really does help you navigate a lot of those challenges. So it was kind of like, just again, following that same premise of our underlying goal is to help you help you navigate the world of work. Giving people the chance to also use software that would get them there felt pretty fitting, but that was a very recent addition. And so for a long time, the only thing that we were tracking was, what is the open rate and how many people are going back, rereading previous newsletters. The only thing you could click on in the past was just to look at our LinkedIn. And once we add in this banner, we are seeing definitely intent and interest. And it is something that, if we really want to dive into that side of the business impact, I'm sure it would also, and we are working on it, but reveal that it really does directly tie to this, business impact. But I do think that also it's important to understand what your goal is. And for most of the time that we've been running this newsletter, the goal is positive brand affinity, and really instilling a sense of trust in Monday. The idea that we know what's going on, we're here to help. We're not really asking you to do anything. We're just giving you this value. That was it was important to us that we stand by that as a brand, and it still is. And so while even adding in that, link was a nice addition where, we can probably see some more ARR, money, business impact, that really isn't the goal of this. The goal is to give you value and to keep you coming back, because you don't want to miss out on these insights. And, when you think of Monday, you're going to think of a brand that you trust.
How do you measure success then? So besides the open rate, is there some kind of KPIs, metrics that you follow?
For us, it was really the open rate and, a very low unsubscribe rate and feedback. I mean, anytime we would do surveys, the feedback was kind of hard to believe how positive, and people saying it's the only newsletter they read, and that it's, they thought they would end up deleting it, but every week they actually look forward to seeing it in their inbox. And, hearing all these amazing kind of words of affirmation about this is really working for us was the greatest way we were measuring it. Was, are people still opening it every week? And actually we saw the open rate go up. We still do. It's continuing to increase, which is hard to believe when the numbers are that high. But I think that really for us, the biggest way we were tracking success was, are people continuing to read it every week? Are more people interested? And what's the feedback telling us? Because it really was this goal of, it's not like we have to see numbers. We have to see like immediate impact. We have to know that this is worth our while. It's like, for us, it was worth it just getting that kind of feedback and knowing that we're in touch with so many people as experts.
One of the questions that I had, I was wondering whether AI somehow helps you with your newsletters. I know you mentioned freelancers and a team of 9 people. What about AI? Is there a place in it to speed up the process somehow?
So for sure, I think, you have to be careful. because AI getting it wrong is really problematic when you're writing to 4 million people. So I guess the areas that we've used it are like extracting interesting insights from an article or from a research report, summarizing some of the key findings that we could then leverage to write ourselves with our tone of voice and our style. And also fine tuning content. Like that was something I think I've recently been really working on, is like putting in a paragraph that's a little bit too long and just being like, can you help me cut down so that it's only X long, or X many words. And that I've also seen some positive. It always requires me to go back and still edit whatever it's come up with, but it does save time, because instead of me trying to think about how do I rewrite this and rephrase this so that it's a little bit shorter or a little bit more to the point, leveraging AI and then kind of just being the final eyes to make sure it's actually accurate or I like the way it's phrased is a lot easier than coming up with it myself or going through every single piece alone. So yeah, I think that really leveraging it as like a summarizer, an editor, and an extractor of like the key information.
How do you think that approach to putting together newsletters is going to evolve, going into the future? I mean, with so much AI around us and, people just going and summarizing stuff on their own, and just going like to YouTube and summarizing the transcripts so they don't have to watch the entire YouTube video. How do you think the SaaS newsletters are going to change considering all of these?
I think that even with all the ability to summarize, speed up, save time, whatever, I think there is something unique about opening your inbox and having the greatest takeaways all summarized for you. Like, I think that even if you were to take the time to ask AI, what are the most important takeaways I should have on the world of work and AI? It wouldn't necessarily give you the information you want in the way that just a newsletter that's kind of been human vetted would give you. I think also we make sure that our newsletter is super skimmable. And that's something that we've gotten great feedback on, is like people are like, I like that I can read the sections that are relevant. Like, I like that I can pick and choose what I want to know. I always know what each section's about, but unless I care about that section, I don't have to read it. And I think that that's something where having all of your information in one place in your inbox, which is something that's super familiar to us, I don't know that that's going to go away. And I also think that especially because our newsletter is definitely geared toward the more like emotional intelligence side of work, of like being a good leader, knowing what's going on, feeling informed, making decisions you're confident about. Those kinds of things AI can definitely help, but it's not going to replace. And I think that actually, as we dive even more into that technical AI driven world, having a newsletter that just helps you navigate the human side is going to be something that AI can't really replace.
Yeah, I hope that's true. I like to agree with you, I would say. Okay, well, thank you so much, for those answers. I do have some of the questions from the audience, so I'm going to try and display some of them. So what's the secret to getting them to sign up for the newsletters? I think, okay, to the newsletters. So maybe you can elaborate a little bit on this.
Yeah, so I think honestly, that is just pitching it. How do you frame the value of the newsletter? As I said, we are kind of marketing it in multiple different areas, but not like shoving it down your throat. And I think that's actually something people are receptive to. I definitely like when it comes to how we're phrasing this offering of like, it's like get the latest news and insights right in your inbox. It's, sometimes we'll mention that it's free, or it's, just up to you to kind of get the information you need to make the right decision for your team or for your business or for yourself or whatever. And I think that kind of framing the value immediately in your kind of trying to get people to sign up message is the best way to ensure that people actually do.
Great. Another question that we have. So thank you for insightful conversation. And you said the unsubscription rate is quite low at Monday. But still, what's your approach to re-engaging inactive subscribers? So that's interesting. We haven't touched upon that.
It's a great question. The truth is that it's not, I think at that point, if you're not engaging with our marketing emails and you're not engaging with our thought leadership emails, it's the kind of thing where we do have to take a hint. And this is something that's a really hard thing to do. but it's really, really important not to spam your users. If they're not interested in the thought leadership side, in the product side, they might not just be interested right now. And sometimes that is a challenging thing that you have to accept. But at the end of the day, trying to like beg someone to read your content isn't really a good use of your time. Instead, it's for us, it's been focusing on giving value to the people that really want it.
Do you ask them like why they're unsubscribing? Do they have some kind of options to choose from when they do?
So if they want to manage their preferences in general of like, I don't want to receive marketing emails, but I do want to receive the Monday newsletter, or I do want to receive automated platform emails, whatever, they definitely can do that, like choosing their preferences. But it's not that if they unsubscribe, we're going to ask them and follow up on why. I mean, probably, to be fair, at smaller companies, that could be a really strategic thing to understand of like getting that feedback. I think that when you have such a large user base, it's just not necessarily like for us been the most strategic use of our time, but it's a really good question. It's something that like I definitely, it was a smaller newsletter, we had 1,000 subscribers, and I wanted to ask like, the several number why they're unsubscribing, I definitely would reach out and would you be open to scheduling a quick call, or can you fill out this survey or give us advice to improve going forward so that we can do a better job for the people that are still sticking around.
If I subscribed to all of these email sequences that Monday.com is sending, how many emails would I receive per week?
It depends. Actually, it really depends because we do a lot of segmentation. So especially the more we can segment, the better. So when it comes to certain events, it's like we would only send it to you if you're in the area, or when it comes to a specific type of webinar, we'd only send it to you if you use that feature. And so it really does depend on the kind of user you are, how active you are, what kind of value we think that we can deliver. So it's really mixed. It's hard to give like a really clear answer. You're not going to get more than one email a day, I don't think, but it definitely could be that if you're super engaged on multiple different fronts and you're our most active email recipients, you get a lot. But hopefully the value's there enough that you'll understand why and you'll appreciate the email.
Yeah, one of the comments that we've had is listening to this makes me want to subscribe to the newsletter. Okay, please do. That's
I'll add
lots of learnings.
To subscribe.
Yeah, you should do that. Also, Irina is asking, how do you approach segmentation to maximize open rates? Yeah, how do you segment people?
So it really depends on, for us, we try to do segmentation according to like making sure it's still a large enough body of people, since obviously we have a lot of emails. We wouldn't segment if it's 1,000 people. We would do segmentation when it's like groups of several 100,000 people. Typically it depends on the emails, but it would be based on maybe platform activity, what your role is. So one of the big ones that we'll often try to segment is, we call them power users at Monday, which are like the most active, most engaged people on the platform versus executives. And the reason is that it's a very different message. So when you're speaking to an executive about the value of a work software, you're going to speak in more high level language of what is in it for their organization, what's in it for them when it comes to visibility, when it comes to the insights they can gain, when it comes to, sharing the right information, making the right decisions. And when it comes to, a power user, someone who's really active on the platform, we can speak more to the specific features. We've released some new automations that you should definitely look into, or here's how you can integrate this tool into your workflow. Those are things that a more active, Monday user would be really, really receptive towards knowing. And it would be a waste to send them that high level information and not address the really hands-on technical skills that we can give them. So a really important piece of segmentation is, why are we doing it? Why are we sending them a different email? And, for example, we also will do segmentation when it comes to department, because the challenges as a marketing leader are really different than the challenges of an engineer. We also segment by product in general. So because we now are a multi-product company, we make sure to send, relevant emails to Monday Dev users and relevant emails to Monday CRM users, and they would have different content because it's a different audience.
And do you somehow work on database cleanup? Like, let's say someone is not opening an email consistently, like 10 times in a row, you can see that person is not opening. Is he or she off the list, or they stay,
Yeah.
or like, what do you
Yeah.
do?
So we do at a certain point kind of clean up and make sure that we're not sending to people that are never opening our content. I'm not the one in charge of it, so I'm not sure at what point we decide is like the metric of like, this is it, let's let it go. But we definitely make sure to not be kind of wasting. Obviously, when you're paying for this platform that is storing all your data, it's not worth storing the contacts of people that have absolutely no interest in you as a brand. So
Yeah, I can only imagine, 4 million in the database, that must cost a fortune. Okay, so which channels, another question, which channels do you use to promote signing up for the newsletter? Which channels work best?
So when it comes to, as I said, some people are actually automatically subscribed when we think this is like an audience that could be used, like really gaining value from this. And then also others, when it comes to promoting it, we'll do it in our product updates newsletter, which is our by the way, the 4 million is actually not Monday's full database. That's just the number of users that receive the newsletter. But we have a much larger database actually of people that are getting, especially for users that are getting like the really important technical product updates, what's going on. And so we are always sure to market the thought leadership newsletter there without kind of pushing it down your throat. If this is something you want, here's a way to sign up. On social, that's been a big one too. We've tried to create more engaging content and then leveraging that content of like, if you're interested in the newsletter, here's a great way to sign up. We also have, I'm trying to think if there's any other like if we have a podcast now that links out to signing up to the newsletter. So we've tried a lot of different channels and we do see great engagement. But it's varied. I wouldn't say there's one that we particularly have found works the best.
Anyone on your team has an open rate, in your email marketing team has an open rate higher than 61%?
So actually, I have been the dedicated content person on the team. So it's like as a team, this is our highest open rate. So no, I mean, obviously, when you're working with a much smaller demographic, like for example, when we sent actually to specific highly engaged newsletter recipients a survey, it was crazy. We actually had like a 98% open rate or something because it was specific targeted audience. So obviously, with smaller numbers of recipients, when especially if you can gain something like specific from it, or maybe even scheduling a meeting or coming to registering for an event, sometimes you'll see like different kinds of open rate. But when it comes to this magnitude of recipients, this is the highest open rate by far. I mean, for emails that we're sending to more than this, we see kind of I think our benchmark strong open rate is around 32%.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I think we're about to wrap things up. I don't think we have more questions, but guys, we are going to send the follow-up emails. And in the follow-up email, we are going to include Arielle's LinkedIn profile. So please feel free to reach out in case you have some questions after our event. So please stay tuned. We're going to also send you the recording. If you guys are looking to help scale your SaaS business, feel free to reach out to me. And yeah, otherwise, Arielle, I am super thankful for this conversation today. You've shared just a ton of super useful insights. Everyone, if you haven't subscribed to Monday.com newsletter, please do. And this is going to teach you a little bit about email marketing and how to get that 61% open rate. Thank you again, everyone. Keep growing. And we're going to see you at our next event. Have a fantastic end of February.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.